Assalamualaikum. Today my friends and I will be presenting about the theory of realism. First and foremost, my name is Nur Asma binti Nur Effendi. So let me briefly explain to you guys about what is realism. In philosophy, realism refers to the view that the reality of any material and object exists in the world independently of the human mind. In international relations, realism is a theory essentially about power and security. It is grounded in the idea of power politics. States relentlessly seek power and security as they are self-help systems. Why is that? Why do they need to build up their military or go to war? This is because in realism, you cannot trust anybody. Let's say if the state next door is building up their military, you cannot trust them to not use that military against you. So the state need to look up them for themselves. Realists believe that the international relations should be organized in the form of anarchic world order whereby the state themselves have ultimate sovereignty. Every state desired to become the most powerful state in that system in global, whereby they wanted to establish hegemony over other states. Hegemony known as the dominant state in an international system.
Hi, Assalamualaikum. My name is Nur Hazwani binti Muhammad Razali and I will be explain about the factor that contribute to the realism. Okay, the realism is one of the dominant schools of thought in international relation theory. The theory of realism is contrasted by ideals of liberalism. There are many factors that lead to the rise of the realisms in this world. It re-emerged due to the weaknesses of idealism, which failed to prevent war from occurring for the second time after World War II. The first assumption of realism is that the state is the principal actor in international relations and other body existence power is limited. This means that the state use power to pursue national interest and the aggressive method will be used as long as they get what they want. The strong country is the country that has power. Here, taking actions that would make the state weak or vulnerable would not be rational. That is the belief in the realism. Other than that, the factor why realism exists is from the natural characteristics of human beings that are really wanted to gain power no matter what they need to face. They suggest that all leaders, no matter what their political persuasion, must make sure that the country is strong in order to survive in the competitive environment. They also need to be selfish, always seeking power, suspicions, and aggressive to remain strong. Central to all the assumption is that the view that human beings are egoistic and desire power. Realists also believe that our selfishness, our appetite for power leads to the predictable outcome. That is why war has been so common throughout the recorded history.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Seremban Zakaria. So next, I'm going to continue with the factor of realism, which is realism. Realism focuses on abiding patterns of interactions in an international system lacking a centralized political authority. That condition of anarchy means that the logic of international politics often differ from domestic politics, which is regulated by a sovereign power. Realists are generally pessimistic about the possibility of radical systematic reform. The realists argue that the international system in anarchy has no central government to guide the behavior of state in the world system. Realism refusal the greater or superior authority. This is because the political realists fear with centralized authority unless the authority is derived from the power of his or her own state. Next, the development of realism in international relations was encouraged by the policies that arise from unregulated competition of state. This is because the state have used the anarchy system so that there is no centralized power or authority in international level. It means that there is no authority or superior politics, law in international system. They believe that only state can rely on their self and protect their right and interest. All states have to rely upon their own resources to secure their interests, enforce whatever agreement they may have enter into with other states, or to maintain desirable domestic and international order. Lastly, primary concern in realism is to promote national security and survival. As we all know, national survival is an important thing as it is one of the interests for all states. All states seek to preserve their political autonomy and their territorial integrity. As said by Niccolo Machiavelli, that they focus on how the basic human characteristic influence the security of the state. The realists assume that states seeks to maximize their security. Some realists focus on power as an end in itself, whereas others regard it as a means to security. The state will always find the ways to maintain their interest and security of the country. For example, they will defend their territorial area, and they might use war to ensure that their religion or territory is safe. The right of the people in the country is still their priority, but at the end of the state, security is all beyond all things.
Next, move on to the parties involved. Political crises happen in the world involve international relations between states. Take an example of Six-Day War, Arab-Israel 1967. This war happened between Arab state and Israel on 5 June until 10 June 1967. It is involving Israel and a state on Arab, which is Mesir, Syria, Jordan, and Iraq. At the end of the war, victory was on Israel. Israel has managed to control many areas in Arab with the support of weapons from America and Britain. This war has taken thousands of lives, and it has directly given effect to the Arab state. Situation of Six-Day War 1967 has met the main assumption found in theory of realism in relation with human nature, question of war, and rationality of national action.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Amira Fiza binti Muhammad Nizam. Is it relevant to practice realism theory in this modern era? In our opinion, it is relevant because firstly, all events in international politics do make sense and can be explained through relatively clear and immediate principles. This can be proved by the cooperation between countries which describe their way to increase the security of one another. Not only that, realism might be specific for nations that only care for self-interest to become rational in seeking strength which they want to maximize their self-security. At the same time, realism shows that there might be an opportunity for the states to gain self-existence between each other. Second, it is driving approach in the broad fields of political studies and political theory. Classical realism has actually shaped the way which relations between countries over the centuries has been understood within the realism, and still could influence policy makers in this modern era. According to certain observers, realism has determined the foreign policies of Barack Obama and Donald Trump, who were known as the former president of the United States. Last but not least, realism can still enlighten people's understanding of world politics by offering critical insights on the refugee crisis in Europe and the Middle East. Some researcher and observer like Li Bao said that they refer to the current refugee crisis in Europe and the Middle East to demonstrate the potential of realism for 21st century international theorizing. As a fact, in 2016, more than 4.5 million people were displaced from Syria, of which an estimated 2.5 million people were living in Turkey at that time, and more than 100,000 people applications for asylum have reached the European Union. Realism offers valuable insights into this crisis as the researcher can explore the conditions for disagreements to coexist peacefully. And this is significant because refugees have been described as one of the reasons why the British public voted to leave the European Union in 2016, and the emergence of right-wing parties across Europe further indicates that refugees are seen as a challenge in safety discourse. And by applying this definition to the current refugee crisis, they actually recognize that the interpretation of refugees as a security threat is the product of human will and political organization. For example, one of the dominant drivers of British Brexit discourses was the refugee crisis. Although in 2015, the United Kingdom received fewer than 40,000 asylum seekers. And by contrast, over 400,000 refugees choose Germany as their destination, and over 160,000 were received by Sweden in the same period, making the latter the European country that welcomed the most refugees in relation to the total population.
The idea of realism, which is survival state, is irrelevant because of the successfulness of international institutions such as UN, EU, and ASEAN. According to Relay 2008, the practice of state alone in realism may appear not relevant in analyzing the model of international system. We can see the UN successfulness in settling the civil war in Mozambique between the Mozambique resistance movement, Renamo, with its dominant political party, Front for Liberation of Mozambique, Frelimo. This war occurred in 1977 when Renamo disrupted the economy and infrastructure while Frelimo trying to improve the economy, which were shattered. However, the conflict ended in 1992 with the intervention of UN through the UN Peace Mission as the peacekeeping of the country. United Nations operation in Mozambique, UNMOS, was established by the Security Council in order to control and support an armistice, force demobilization, and hold the national election as a part of the agreement. As a result, the program of humanitarian assistance was launched in order to help 3.7 million of displaced people due to the war. In 1992, both Renamo and Frelimo signed a peace agreement named as Rome General Peace Accord, which later Renamo became a part of the multi-party election, which was an opposition party. We also can see its successfulness with another country such as Cambodia, with the establishment of United Nations Transitional Authority in Cambodia, UNTAC, also as the peacekeeping. It is shown that the international institution development is commendable attempt to achieve peace around the world nowadays, which possesses most of the liberalist ideal rather than realism ideal, which does not admit that the international institution can increase the capabilities of military and development cooperation among states It is because until today there is no big war occur because of the existence of international institutions. Realism also irrelevant nowadays because cooperation between countries are needed to combat the pandemic COVID-19. According to Gates 2020, COVID-19 can be considered as a world war which involves the same side by all countries in the world. It is mean each of the country can work together to develop tools in fighting this dangerous virus. In other words, the pandemic COVID-19 can be considered as a call of multilateralism, which referring to the participants by 3 or more countries. The key for the damage resolution can be done by global innovation, which should participated by all countries, such as testing, treatment, produce vaccine, and policies in order to limit its spread. In contrast, different for the realism theory in this issue, where the realist assumes that the citizen will not seek the necessary action by international organization or its agencies. As we all know, UN is one of the highest structured institutions which contribute to the international efforts against the pandemic COVID-19. It is because UN has huge system of agencies, programs, and also organs such as WHO. WHO actively play important role in combating this pandemic to coordinate its member states not only to prepare but also to respond to and recover from COVID-19. It can be proven where WHO has issuing the school guidelines, workplace health provider on how to reduce the spread. For example, in March 2020, WHO published the first roadmap in coordinating efforts to create vaccines of this virus, which the testing allocation can be made in efficient way as a fast track for the vaccine. This roadmap includes ship personal protective equipment (PPE) to 128 countries, such as 5.5 million face shields, 2.1 million gloves, and many more, which very benefited to its members nowadays. Not only that, this roadmap also published to strengthen laboratory treatment capacity and biomedical equipment, which allocated for more than 120 countries. It is shown that the international institution is important in combating any issues, especially this pandemic, which hardly to cope by the self-help states. That is why realism are irrelevant nowadays.
All in all, realism points a rather grim picture of world politics. The international system is portrayed as a brutal arena where states look for opportunities to take advantages of each other and therefore have little reason to trust each other. Daily life is essentially a struggle for power where each state strives not only to be the powerful actor in the system but also to ensure that no other state achieve this lofty position.